Welcome to this video. In this video you can see me restore the complete rear suspension, and I've laid all the parts out, and I'm going to run you through everything real quickly. These are the radius arms. These are original, but they're quite rusted and they need a little bit of repair before we can use them. These are the lower links. We're going to throw these away because, as you saw in one of my earlier videos, we've made brand new ones. These are the original shocks. We're not going to use these because these will be replaced by brand new aluminium versions. These are the rear hubs, and I'm quite fortunate that these are in quite good condition. They will need cleaning and painting, and we're also going to replace the wheel studs by the larger ones. So these are the rear bearing carriers. They're cast aluminium and they're really dirty, but I think they'll clean up quite nicely, and normally we can reuse these. These are the rear drum brakes, and this one I haven't taken apart yet. This one I have, and essentially we're going to replace the drums, we're going to replace the linings, we're getting a new adjuster and a new slave cylinder on each wheel, and of course the brake shoes are going to be replaced as well. So essentially the only thing that we're going to reuse is this is the rear back plate. So we're going to clean these up and paint these, and then we're going to install all new components. So this is also the first thing we're going to start with. So we're going to take apart this rear drum brake, and we need to make sure that we know how it will all go back together with all of the new parts. So this is the actual drum itself. This part's quite smooth, but there are quite a bit of grooves in here, and I think they're almost 50 years old. We might better replace them just to be sure. So we can do away with this. So we're going to start by taking these small catches out. Now we're going to remove the brake shoes from the backing plate, and the way to do this is to take these out of the slave cylinder, so the tension on springs has gone. As you can see, as soon as one comes loose, it's quite easy. So now I'm going to use a little of penetrant, get these nuts off. On the other wheels they broke off, so I'm not quite sure if we can prevent this from happening, but we're going to replace these anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Also, the handbrake lever is also something that we're going to reuse. But we're going to try to get this rubber boot off. You can see this horseshoe shaped clip that's retaining the slave cylinder. That's one, and the other one's quite loose. So now you can drop out the slave cylinder, and as you can see, it's really heavily corroded, and the pistons are seized, but these are quite cheap to replace, so we're just going to throw these out We are going to reuse the handbrake levers, so we're going to clean these up as well. This is the adjuster, it's also seized. This is a really dirty back plate, but we're going to try to clean it up a little bit. So we're only trying to get a little bit of the dirt off, because once I've brushed the complete surface, we're going to put it in the tub of vinegar and let it soak for a couple of days, so we can easily brush off the rust. So this will be clean enough before we put it in the tub of vinegar, together with the handbrake lever, and then we'll let it soak for a couple of days, and then it will be a lot easier to clean. These are the rear hubs, and we're just going to clean these and put them in the vinegar so the rust can dissolve. But first we're going to remove the wheel studs. You've seen how I removed them from the front hubs. This is just the same. Just choose a hammer and just firmly tap them out. So it's as easy as that. So now they're fairly clean, but they're still rusty, so now we're just going to put these in the vinegar and then let them sit for a day, and then we'll brush the rust off. I've taken the rear hubs out of the bucket of vinegar and just use a wire brush to brush it off a little bit. As you can see, all the rust is gone. It looks really nice. Now we can install the new wheel studs. This is the other hub. That's one I've done before. It's just the same process as with the front hubs, except that we don't have to modify the wheel studs. These are the new rear brake drums, and as you can see, they come coated from the factory with some grease or oil on it to prevent them from rusting, but the outside is rusted a little bit, the inside is still fine. So obviously you need to clean these off with some brake cleaner, but then they're exposed to the elements and they'll start to rust quite quickly. Now to prevent this, you should just use the brake cleaner, clean off all of the oil and the grease, and then you can paint them, but you only want to paint the outside. So I'm going to degrease this and paint them with the epoxy mastic rust prevention paint. So these are the rear trailing arms. This one is completely original. I removed a little bit of the rust, but this one is to show you what all the problems are. The first one is that this bottom plate is spot welded on these flanges, and you can see there's a lot of rust between all of the spot welds. So I had to remove this plate. This is the original plate that was on here, like so. And once you remove this, you can see the other real problem. This is the inside. I'm not sure if you can see this, but it's all the dirt that's caked on the inside, and underneath all this dirt there's quite a bit of rust. So I had to remove all the rust on the inside with sandpaper, wire brushes, a Dremel tool with little wire wheels, and then I brushed some rust converter in here. The second problem is these little plates for the rear uprights. They're open on the outside, and a lot of rust gets into these plates. As you can see, this is the little plate that I removed off of this trailing arm. This is the bracket that's braced on here. I removed this bracket because we're going to reuse this. And this plate there was a lot of rust on here and it's gotten really thin. There are a little bit of pinholes in here, so we're going to cut this out and then weld in a small replacement piece. Then we'll re-weld this on like it should be. Another small thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try and stop all the dirt from getting in the trailing arm and rusting them out from the inside out. So I'm going to tack a small baffle on the inside here. That way I'm hoping all of the dirt gets stopped here and it won't get all the way through. Obviously we'll also need a new bottom for this one. So I cut this out. And I'm just going to weld these on the outside corners, not spot welding these because the spot welding was only done in the factory because it was easy. So I'm going to completely weld this on in the entire seam and then paint it on the outside. And then they'll be quite okay. I removed the rust off of this one. There's a little bit of pitting on the outside, but in general condition it's quite good. So I'll do all of the welding and then I'll show you what they look like next to the old one, and then I have to do the other one as well before I can get to paint. So I've restored one of the two radius arms, and I'm going to start off by saying, if you have the money, just buy a new one, because they're not that expensive. Well, they cost about £130 plus tax and shipping, so they're not actually cheap, but there's a lot of time that goes in restoring these. So I've put in a new bottom, I put in a baffle plate here, and I also put in a baffle on the end, and I drilled out this hole to 1/2 inch. I re-welded these end plates, and this is not paint, this is just a rust converter, so I still need to paint these. So now I'll have to start restoring this one, but it really takes a lot of time to restore one of these, and any sane person should just buy new ones, because it's good now, but it took really a lot of work. I finished the second rear radius arm, and they're both painted in the rust converter, as are the rear hubs and the back plates. So now I'll have to paint everything again in the epoxy mastic rust prevention paint. So now I'll hang these all up in my workshop and I'll start painting. This is the bracket that bolts on the bottom of the gearbox that will hold the inner joint of the lower links of the rear suspension, and it consists of two parts. This part and this part. These little wings bolt onto the side of the gearbox, and these holes will bolt onto the lower rib of the casing. And this part's fine, it just needs a really good clean and some paint. But this part has a few problems. First of all, you can see that it has bent quite a lot, probably from bottoming the car out on some bumps or something. Because of this, the bracing on the bottom has cracked a little bit as well. There's a small crack here. So the best thing for me to do is just to cut this bracing loose, take this part off because this part's fine, then re-welding the cracks in the lower section, making sure that this part is straight again, so removing all of the bends in it, and then re-welding this part to this part, and then paint it, and then it should be fine. I've straightened this rear part of the bracket in my vise, and now I've turned my gearbox upside down and I've bolted the bracket back to the bottom of the gearbox just to make sure that it's still straight. And as you can see, all the bolt holes still line up perfectly. So I'm sure that these have the correct dimensions now, so I can unbolt the bracket again, weld up the cracks, clean it up a little bit, and then bolt everything back to the gearbox. Then I can weld this while this is clamped in place, so I know that the dimensions are correct. I've welded the bracket up. I welded it on the front and the back, but as you can see, this is just a very fragile design, because the only thing holding this part to the small backbone is this weld, and it's quite a strong weld, and these winglets, or whatever you want to call them, they should stop this bracket flexing. But this is the bottom part of the car, and the previous bracing had cracked because this was bottoming out and this had bent the little tab and therefore cracking this weld. I've also bolted in the new lower links. As you can see, they fit quite well. The movement is nice and free. I've spaced it out with some washers because the new lower link isn't as wide as the original ones, and I want to get these completely interchangeable so I can bolt in original ones if I want to. So these are spaced out and they fit quite well. So now it's time to remove all of the surface rust and then paint this part again, so it's completely ready. The brackets for the lower links that go on the gearbox are completely painted. They're painted with the black epoxy mastic paint. So now I'm going to assemble this and then mount it to the gearbox so that you can assemble the rest of the rear suspension. This is the end of this part of the restoration of the rear suspension. The second video you'll see me restore the rear bearing carriers, but it was too much video to add into one episode, so I had to split it up. This is the end of part 1. I hope you enjoyed it. You can also read about it on my blog. You can also subscribe to this channel so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. And as always, if you have any questions, you can post them below or send me an email through my website. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.